Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Ortiz. I am a reporter at TheWrap. Welcome back to our conversations on cancel culture. After the success of our initial 4 roundtables with journalists, film critics, comedians, and crisis PR experts, we've decided to add a bonus conversation, this one extra special. Today, I'm going to be speaking with actress and singer Samantha Ware, best known for her role as Jane Hayward in the final season of the 2-time Golden Globe winning series Glee. It's been just about a year ago, almost to the day, Sam spoke out on social media about the toxic culture that she experienced on set. Of course, advocating for social and racial and gender equality is something that is extremely important to Sam. Most recently, she starred in the Netflix hit series What If and the CBS drama series All Rise. Today, we're going to be speaking about accountability in Hollywood and what it takes to really affect necessary changes. Sam, hello. How are you?
Hey!
We
extra
are
special.
So
dang. The pressure.
You are extra special because you really, we can talk to experts all day long about cancel culture and you can talk to outside perspectives, but you're someone who really was, you're on the inside of Hollywood and you have experienced cancel culture in one way or another. So I really want to draw on your firsthand experiences here. Obviously, I want to start with your experiences on Glee. It's been just over a year at this point since you publicly spoke out about it, and the internet kind of blew up about it. Your specific experiences with Lea Michele. Did it surprise you to see how that took off and the fact that we are still talking about it a year later?
Did it surprise me? Yeah, there was a bit of a shock factor after the fact. When the incident happened, with the tweet being thumbed out on my phone and sent, that was a very human moment for me. One that was rooted in trauma and unresolved issues with the said person who was involved. And so to that extent, yeah, a very human moment, I would say. So I didn't really expect anything but, you know what I mean? It was all emotion based until I realized that I was in an evolution of a digital world where you literally can say one thing and 5 minutes later it's trending #1 on Twitter. So yeah, I forgot that I lived in that world in that moment until I had 6 missed phone calls after I got out of the kitchen. So yeah.
Looking back on it now, do you think you would have done anything differently? Or was it something that you just, like you said, it's a human moment. Did you just really need to get it out?
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't regret anything. If I were to go back in a time ship, I would just probably sit on the couch and watch myself do it again. I'm not going to apologize for anything I said or did because all it was my truth. Maybe people disagree with the way that I express myself, but again, we're in the middle of a very interesting shift within social politics and identity. And our old ways obviously were not servicing us in any way. So yeah, I definitely would do it again. Period.
Yeah.
And you're right. I like what you said. Maybe it was just something that needed to get out. Yeah, I think so. I think with the special concoction and formula of what was going on with, George Floyd's murder being exploited and all over the internet, which is a completely different conversation if we want to branch into why it is necessary to continuously and perpetually see Black bodies. Murdered Black bodies, hunted Black bodies, lynched Black bodies. Why are they just so accessible via the internet? Why do we have to be re-traumatized and reminded that we are strange fruit, in the words of Billie Holiday? So yeah, I think with that variable and my own personal attachments to Hollywood and its ongoing bullying, I guess I would say. Yeah, girl, she just rolled on out.
She rolled on out. What did it mean to you at the time to have the support of former cast members? Because I remember distinctly, Amber Riley, Alex Newell, they very quickly supported you on Twitter. And I know that speaking about the incident, at least at the time that it happened, you've talked about how it was just kind of an accepted culture on set. It was something that people were well aware of. And you were told, like, well, that's just how it is. And no one could step up at the time. So what did it mean to you, all these years later, to then have these cast members backing you up and really providing the validation there?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of feelings with that as well, right? Because we are reflecting on a time where there wasn't anyone stepping up to the plate or standing up to those who did control the atmosphere of the environment at the time. And because we live in such a state of political correctness, or we're evolving out of it slowly but surely, I think it made it opened the door a little bit for those people to come forward, and be able to slightly kind of stick up for me in a way that is appropriate, I guess. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I guess there's just the before, and then there's the during, and then there's the after. And obviously I can't go back and change that situation or that experience that I had, though I do wish there were more people who were aware of the toxicity, because even then, for it being my first job, there was something that was telling me that there was nothing normal about the way that things were being carried on, especially given the history of the show. So I'm already a sensitive person. Okay, I've already been through my own battles with my own life, and to have a dream granted for you, and to have your childlike self like leap with joy, and you can't sleep the night before because your heart is pounding because it's your first day set, and you're just like, dang, I did it. I booked a television series. Not only did I book a television series as like a Broadway girl with dreams, I booked a television series that I get to sing and perform and dance. So like to literally go into the dream and have it just kind of be clouded and turn into a nightmare, it's something that I will never have back. And so again, with the variable and with that being one of the variables of the formula I was talking about earlier about why this tweet ever happened, it's just layers on layers on layers. So yeah.
You did mention that people maybe weren't loving the way that you express yourself, whether it be via tweet or on social media in general. I'm curious, and this extends beyond just you. People, there is every once in a while, and not even every once in a while, a lot of times there is backlash against the person who speaks their truth. There are people that you're speaking a truth about someone maybe that they adored, or they don't want the conflict to affect something that they love. So did you face backlash? Have you continued to face backlash? I mean, what's it like being on that side of it, where it's, I need to say these things, people need to know these things, and then people get mad for you saying these things?
Right. Well, we've seen with like social media that it's easier to condemn people instead of ideas, right? So that's just simply us updating our belief systems and like having the autonomy to like change our minds or express ourselves in different ways, right? Because with cancel culture, we see people getting dragged for, I think it was like recently Billie Eilish, like she was like, I don't know, she's still like a kid, so it's crazy to me that people are like pulling up like stuff when she was 11, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's almost like people, even with Lin and, you know, his project, and it's like you do the note apology, and I don't know. It's just, I guess, again, it goes back to evolving and being part of this cosmic collective shift that's happening. So yeah, just updating our beliefs in general. Did I get backlash? Yes. Did I get some ridiculous, like, you know, the death threat thing is something that, you know, I can look at and laugh, but it's just really like, wow, there are some cold-hearted people out there. But at the same time, I have some beautiful ancestors who literally, if they would have never opened their mouths, I would not be in this place that I am in right now, talking to you even about a newer evolution of communication. So, yeah, it's yeah, that's it. It's just kind of like, if that's the small break that I have to get, or it's the you know, everything is calm, everything just, the energy is the energy, right? If I put it out there, there was going to be some residue or a little bit of a boomerang, or like maybe the dagger like hit me in the shoulder, but it definitely did more good than, you know, anything that has to do with me. So yeah, I think we should just stop measuring people's character by their popularity and actually start, you know,
By
kind
their
of
actions.
being, yeah.
So you mentioned LinManuel, and that's something I really want to get into, is because this is a very recent thing. Obviously, what you went through was a year ago, and then even more so before that. But LinManuel Miranda just came out with In the Heights, and it is an adaptation of his, you know, his hit Broadway musical In the Heights of the same name. It's funny how that works. But he faced a lot of backlash for it, and it wasn't just him; it was the whole crew. But obviously, because it was originally his, it came down squarely on his shoulders. And the conflict there was that people were saying that there wasn't enough Afro Latinx representation in the film. So before we get into kind of how that hit him and how he apologized, I know this is something that you've been vocal about on Twitter. You are an audience, you're part of the audience rather, that was directly affected by this representation. So I would love to get your thoughts on the film and why it matters that this particular issue was brought to light.
Yeah, first of all, I would just like to address that Lin-Manuel is a creative genius. We all know it. We've all seen it. I was honored to be a part of his project Hamilton a few years ago. Maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I wrapped the regional production in Chicago. And, you know, colorism was the discussion. And colorism is something that I am very, very passionate about. For colorism is something that literally is this uncontrollable captain that I can't seem to like kill. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want the boat to go that direction, but unfortunately, I have no power in steering it because this villain of colorism has a stronghold on the, what is that thing?
The wheel, I guess.
The wheel, right? Or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go with the wheel. Yeah.
Total control.
But okay, so for our audience who may not know this, because unfortunately there are things that we probably should understand and don't, and we are woefully uneducated. Colorism, and correct me if I am wrong here, unless you would like to explain it yourself.
No, go ahead, girl.
Okay, so the way I understand colorism is that it's privileges are afforded to those who are more light skinned, to African Americans who are more light skinned, and those who are darker skinned are still at a disadvantage. And so, for example, in the particular case of In the Heights, it was light skinned Afro Latinx, excuse me, and light skinned Puerto Ricans. They were afforded the opportunity of being principal cast members, whereas the darker skinned players were more dancers and more in the background. And that's something that is common, whereas the lighter skinned folks are afforded more privileges. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes. Pretty much
Okay.
just the discrimination of darker skinned people.
See, you wrapped it
Yeah.
up much nicer than I could. It was,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, no, no. Listen, we're having this conversation. We're all evolving and learning. I've been having this conversation not only with myself, but like recently with more and more people. So even the way I talk about it is evolving. Like, no worries. But yeah, again, it's difficult to sometimes even. I still have a little like fear has hindered me from speaking up in the past, clearly, obviously. But at the same time, if we were all collectively under the idea, especially after last summer, during a global pandemic, during where we saw racial uprisings, and dealing with police brutality, getting the conversations of abolition, and we're stepping into these radical ideas where people are finally picking up James Baldwin books, Bell Hooks, Nikki Giovanni, finally getting past that there was more than one light-skinned Black Panther named Angela Davis. Like, at least maybe in my world, those conversations are happening. I can't say obviously everything for globally or even regionally,
right.
but it's still difficult, right? Because again, I work directly with Lynn and his team. And so in the past, as a dark skinned woman, who has often felt invisible or has felt projected on by people who clearly don't even associate themselves or converse with darker skinned people. And you can tell when especially cis hetero men don't interact with dark skinned women. Like, when I tell you, like, the times that I have felt like an animal or an alien, um, it's more times than I ever wish I would have experienced, especially in a corporate setting, in a space. And I have felt that in every production I've been in, and that does not exclude Hamilton. And even with being in that show, I always incited conversations about something like why Eliza Hamilton couldn't have been a dark skinned woman in the first place if the intention was to expand a general white audience's mind about how we view America. Why were there dark skinned entities still erased if we're showing people of color? Which is why that term sometimes is irritating to me, because I feel like it's unfair to lump Black people, especially dark skinned Black people, and people of color, because again, here we are talking about the light skinned uh, Latinx folks being showcased and their darker counterparts, not like Dominican and Panamanian, like, you know what I mean? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
lived in New York for 8 years. Like, that didn't look like Washington Heights to me. But
No.
but we really have to start at, like, I'm not above asking the hard questions. I'm not above anymore being in spaces where I literally just say how I feel, because you know silence is compliance. Like, there's no other way to talk about it now. We can't move forward without literally deconstructing and diminishing the oppression that has been blanketed over these corporate environments, including the Hollywood industry. So it's difficult, right? Because I do appreciate Lynn, but also these men know better. These casting directors know better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think what Lynn saw was that the people are past just clicking thumbs down on the ratings, like, or we're past just glancing at Rotten Tomatoes. You know what I mean? The internet
Mm-hmm.
is a real thing. The internet is a real collective. The internet is, whether you like it or not, whatever it's doing, or however whatever's being created. Because again, we're still in the infancy of what digital,
Yeah. It's
happenings
only going to keep
are going
growing.
on.
Yeah.
It's only going to keep growing. But I appreciate Black Twitter and all it has done. Without Black Twitter, I wouldn't have as large as a reading comprehension. I almost feel like the book suggestions or the authors and poets that I've been introduced to via Black Twitter is insane. So it's always a double-edged sword, right? You can either use a hammer to build a house or kill an entire family, like
Right.
free will, humankind, yada, yada, yada. But what I love about this specific incident with In the Heights is that you cannot hide anymore. And unfortunately, Lin had to take that hit to his film, to his ego, to his art. And I know what it's like to be an artist, and people may or may not be vibing with Joe-ish. So I have empathy for him in that realm. But now, as a white passing Latino man who is supposed to be representing the heart of New York City, the foundation of New York City, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He ultimately failed and he let down a lot of people, and he had to physically read and see uh, uh, the repercussions of his own ignorance. And so, yes, it sucks, and I do not believe in cancel culture. No, again, update your belief system, because obviously, if you can't evolve out of what you think is the center of your reality, like obviously you're gonna end up in a spot like Lynn.
So that
Uh,
being said, I know, and you say, you know, you don't believe in cancel culture, which I respect, because it all comes back to accountability, right? There's this distinction growing between someone being canceled and someone being held accountable. And in this case, I personally would argue that Lynn is being held accountable for what happened with In the
mhm,
Heights. He did issue an apology saying,
mhm,
I hear you. I see what you're saying. I recognize that we failed you. And that is a big distinction, because it's saying outright, like, yes, we didn't hit the mark. That being said, is that apology enough? Is it enough to say, yes, I see you, I hear you, I understand you? Or does he need to be doing more going forward?
of course, he needs to be doing more moving forward. Uh, yes. Again, it's updating our belief systems. Maybe at one time, Lynn did believe that the only way to get his work recognized on a national scale is to adhere to white social politics, and direct his language and his vocabulary to a white audience. But again, now he sees that they're not the only ones who are watching, especially when you release a big piece of art, right? Because New York City is New York City, Broadway is Broadway. Now you got the whole world watching. So, um, yeah, and then it's just as far as accountability goes, yeah, again, we're evolving into these new frameworks of accountability, and it is finding this like medium or like a scale of balance without going too extreme. But cast dark skinned women, cast dark skinned fat Black women, cast disabled dark skinned bodies. Like, just do better. Like, I don't believe you can walk around New York City and like, oh, you can't walk an avenue or 3 blocks without literally seeing a glimpse of like 80% of the world. So I think, yes, LinManuel Miranda can do a better job, and his entire creative team. And I would love to see more dark skinned women on his team in general. A majority of his teams in the past have been light skinned men or white passing men. Even John Cho, though does he identify as Asian American?
I believe so, but I don't want to speak for him. I do not know that for
Neither.
certain.
Neither do I. Either way, it still doesn't matter because he is a light skinned man and they're all white passing, which, listen, I feel like I can just say the same thing in 18 different ways.
Right.
But it's an issue, and I hope that he turns around from this and looks into the apparatus that is his empire, of what his intention is, right? Because Lynn's intention has been to diversify and, to put his people front and center. But all he did was put the people who were digestible for a white audience front and center. So is that really changed? No, because we've seen it before, right? So yeah, I hope that that's all I want people to do is learn something, Tyra Banks. Learn something from this.
Learn something. Well, okay. So in the vein of learning something, and it's something that clearly you're very passionate about, and you just as Sam, you are not afraid to speak up. I'm curious what those conversations have looked like for you, because I have no doubt that you have told someone to their face or to their virtual face via Twitter, however it may be that you interact, do better. You hold them accountable and you have that conversation. But people, how do people take it? Because people are very afraid of cancel culture at this point. So do they get defensive, like you're trying to cancel me? Or how do you make those conversations palatable for someone to adjust their behavior?
Right. And again, these frameworks of accountability, because I'm also learning. I'm a very blunt person. Like I obviously say how I feel, especially if it's incited from the energy of, like, another conversation that's happening, or this film or art piece or whatever. People either ignore it until the numbers can't be ignored, or yeah, people act defensively mostly. I mean, and again, how you approach the conversation also matters. I don't think that we should always be dragging everyone. I think there's certain ways to approach conversation that may help engage the other party. But nobody likes being wrong. And as we do move into the future of individuality, it gets a little bit more difficult for those who have reached their full expression to have to be forced to peel it back. So it's we talking about a whole new creature, nucleus of new conversations. So for me personally, it's hard to pinpoint some of these things without fully letting my, I don't know, my head say more than what my heart actually wants to. So yeah.
So that being said, with cancel culture and whatnot, there is clearly, as we've seen, there is a racial element to it, right? And does it seem to you like cancel culture comes down harder on maybe people of color versus white people? So a specific example I want to use here is Nick Cannon, who recently made anti-Semitic comments, and it was over, lost things, like lost his job, immediately had to issue apologies. And then there's the recent, Ellie Kemper situation, where it was photos from her past being involved with a debutante ball that had very racist past, that she, in her apologies, she said, "I didn't know at the time. Age is no excuse for my ignorance." But does it seem like maybe someone like Ellie Kemper got off a little bit easier or was given more of a pass than someone like Nick Cannon?
Yes, white women's fragility had everything to do with that, right? Whiteness in itself is seen as soft, light, heavenly. White women in the past have always been looked at as innocent, fragile, meek and mild subjects. We can go back to the conversation about Emmett Till, or the young lady in the bird park. What was her name? Sarah something.
Something.
Where she was
But yeah, she
accusing
called the cops
the
on
bird
a bird
watching.
watcher.
Yeah, yeah. Again, we are all coming out of the unlearnings of white supremacy. So yes, discrimination, racism, colorism has everything to do with cancel culture as well. It's going to be reflected in everything. And Nick Cannon is a Black man, and she is a white woman. And your imagination doesn't have to go far to realize why, exactly. If you even think about the character she plays, very aloof, silly, comedic, innocent, childlike. Whereas you have a Black man who's been a rapper, you know what I mean, who's within the hip hop culture, and it's just, yeah, it explains itself.
That being said,
But they're both wrong. But they're both wrong. But
they're both wrong. Yes, they're both wrong.
Let's get that straight. But you're talking about the judge and jury of it all, who got off easier, blah 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 blah. Blah. Yes, of course.
I'm talking about the public discourse surrounding.
But they're both
because
wrong. Yes,
they are both wrong, and it's just interesting to see which situation rather kind of stays in the memory of people. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Am I making sense now?
Yeah, of course. No, definitely.
I keep transitioning the same way. I keep saying that said. But that being said, you mentioned, characters that Ellie played. One thing that we've talked about in our conversations on cancel culture is the rewatchability of certain projects after, let's say cast members have been canceled. Glee is a great example of one that has maybe gotten harder for people to rewatch, but even shows like Friends or The Office, I mean, it's hard for things to age well at this point. So we'd love to talk about the concept of separating the art from the artist, right? Because that's always the thing, is if something happens to someone beloved, well, they did a bad thing, but the thing they created is still great. So what kind of conversations need to be happening there? Is there a point where we do need to separate art from artist, or is it always one and the same?
Yeah, this conversation comes up a lot, and I, to be honest, still wouldn't be able to define how I feel about it. I think everyone has their, if you like it. I would just be very careful about the conversations you choose about said people. But I mean, it's a few slices of the pie, right? That we're trying to take a bite of, because if we're talking about artists, especially current artists, right, who are here to speak for themselves, who are here to make the apologies, who are here to update their belief systems, who are here to change the narrative, learn from it by showing us, physically showing us through their actions that they have the capacity to change. Whereas those who aren't no longer here with us, like we had the conversation, we always go back to the conversation of Michael Jackson and yada yada yada. And yeah, again, it's so much easier to condemn people than ideas. So I don't know. It's a ongoing conversation for me, because it's like, what does that look like? And again, what are the formulas and the formats and the framework for accountability? Like, what does that look like? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? I think people are just now writing books on how this works. So that I don't really have a solid answer. I would say that I struggle to find what that balance is.
I respect that, though, because this I believe should happen in more conversations where people take the time and say, I need to think on this more. I need more information. I really need more life experience, whatever it is. There's a point where you just kind of have to pull back and say, like, this is not necessarily where I need to insert myself in this conversation.
Definitely.
With cancel culture, it's always an odd thing, because it all comes down to the apologies, and we mentioned this earlier, and work that needs to be done, and to bring it way on back. Obviously, with your situation with Leah Michelle, there was an apology issued, but it was, I believe I have it here, it was about perception, right? And she said, I apologize for my behavior and for any pain which I have caused. We can all grow and change, and I have definitely used these past several months to reflect on my own shortcomings. But it was also about, I'm sorry for how my actions were perceived. And at the time, you said that it showed that she hadn't learned anything. So how can we? I'm finding this on the way here, because it's a complicated subject. But within an apology, it's the work that needs to be done. So how can we know that someone really is putting in the work? Does it just come down to seeing what they do?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, for this specific situation, again, I'm coming at this from being a human. I'm not really concerned with like being politically correct in any way right now.
Right.
This person in my life was abusive. And I think another branch of conversations, what exploring abuse outside of sexual abuse. You know, we have manipulative abuse, physical. There are people who abuse their power, um, and there were a lot of things going on. So I think with this specific case, the front end was great. Look, I'm reflecting now. I realize that after seeing that 55 other people who have worked with me in the past, even down to the atmosphere on set, they used to be called extras, but I think atmosphere is a better word. Have literally came out of the crooks and crevices to share their stories. It's like this is bigger than just between you and I. Like you shouldn't just be apologizing to me. Do you know what I mean? Like you should have a conversation about, as a white woman, why it's important for you to be called out, because right now I'm doing all the labor. I'm the one talking about why these things matter, which I mean, dark skinned black women should be the figures for this conversation. But here we have, again, you know, I had to be the one that was like, hey, this person is destructive and abusive. And is, you know, because what it incited the tweet was that, oh, a George Floyd was not an isolated incident. And it's like, oh, it's funny how you can reflect and see that, but like I wasn't afforded my humanity when I was right in front of you. And that is literally like a microaggression of the macro of why George Floyd ended up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with that, it's just kind of like, I don't know. As far as that person goes, I don't. People. It's really interesting because the moral Olympics that also happens on Twitter with the kumbaya culture and to come with peace, and or just to wait it out, or you know what I mean, like just wait and see. And it's always Black people who have to wait and see, right? We have to stand by and just, you know, or be the bigger person, and
That's
you
not
know what I
fair.
mean? For this situation, I think I gave that up when I made that tweet. This idea of being the bigger person. Yeah, we just need to evolve those languages as well when it does come to people dealing with abuse. And yeah, I don't know. They're probably going to drag me. I don't care. Like at this point, I can only come as myself and speak as myself. In the time, my mind could change and my vocabulary could change and this conversation could change and how I feel about it could change. But in this present moment, that's how I feel. I don't really have anything nice to say still. So
But it's honest, and it's coming from your own experiences, and I imagine it has to be exhausting at this point to still, even outside of this incident, it's exhausting to call out other things that keep happening, right? It's one of those things that like it should be changing. Cancel culture is one of those things that it instead of allowing people to grow, maybe it's we're going to shut this down and we're just going to it's done. That's just the end of it. So I see what you're saying in not necessarily coming and believing in cancel culture. I don't want to speak for you here, but I imagine it has to be exhausting just going to bat for it. I mean, putting up the fight the whole time and calling out these things that keep happening. Yes, or is it one of those fights that's worth it? or both.
Well, the fight is always going to be worth it. And I'm all about my community. I'm all about Black liberation, but I'm also about liberation within myself. There's an end to this. Like, I'm gonna die, and I can't tell you how some days I wake up, I cannot believe that I was afforded a life, uh, you know, as an able-bodied woman, as a beautiful woman,
yes, girl.
as
we love this
someone
confidence.
who somebody who has been afforded the opportunity to begin thriving in an industry like this, to fulfill my dreams, to be able to feed myself, to be in good health, uh, to just these luxuries that we all take for granted, to be able to go to the ocean and like throw salt water in my face, like to live, to really live, and to really just kind of assess what living is. Oppression, racism, colorism, that's not living. That's not freedom. That's not fair to me. So yes, I want to ride for everybody, but I'm also riding for myself. And if I accumulate a group of people who are also on the same wave, then yes, and there are people on this same wave. I'm going to just take this moment to call out some folks that I follow
Please do.
online. Imani Barbarin, she goes by Crutches and Spice on Instagram, and she is a dark-skinned disabled woman. I love following her. She informs me about what it's like to be her, and again, like even as a dark-skinned, able-bodied, cis-passing woman, I don't always need to be centering myself in conversations. So I love being able to take the back seat and listen instead of always spearheading the conversation. We have Amber J. Phillips, who is pro Fat Black Femmes, and they are all about the queer culture in the Black community. She has really great conversations. I Heart Erica, Erica and Ebony Heart Online. They're also a queer couple. They talk a lot about trans issues and gender identity. And we have Shishi Rose, who's a dark-skinned Black femme, and they talk about Black maternal health, which is also a recent conversation. Sadly, even the trust within the medical system for Black people, especially darker skinned femmes, is complicated. And there's a lot of context within that has to go with even down to the vaccine, why we have so much mistrust with the medical system, right? So I just wanted to pause there and throw out some follows, or if anybody is interested in following those people. Those are people I engage with on the daily that also help me grow as an artist. And I don't really like calling myself an activist. I'm just doing it because I'm owed liberation. I'm owed freedom. I'm owed the same slice of pie as everybody else. So yeah, so back to the conversation though, we were talking about
apologies and work being done. So it's fitting that you bring these people up. It's about having conversations with people like the women that you just mentioned at the end of the day.
Yeah. Some of them don't identify as women. Some of them are non-binary.
I'm so very sorry.
Queer. No, it's okay. I just want to make sure that that's clear as well. And I might have misgendered, and if I did, I apologize to those people. But yes.
Well, Sam, I think this has been a great conversation. I think this is a great spot to wrap up, highlighting some wonderful voices in addition to yours. Thank you so very much for joining us today. I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. I feel like I have learned a lot. I feel like there's still more that I need to learn. So it is going to be a little bit of an assignment. I'm going to do more research and expand, my frameworks as we were talking about. Thank you to those who tuned in for this conversation on cancel culture. If you want to go back and rewatch it and relearn some things, digest it a little bit further, take your time with it, absolutely encouraged. You can find it over at TheWrap.com/cancel culture series. Sam, thank you so very, very much.
Thanks for having me.